Isabella Guzman. She's accused of stabbing her mother 79 times.
With breaking news in Aurora this morning, police are now looking for this woman. They're calling her a suspect in a deadly stabbing overnight. A woman was found dead in a home on South Lima Street.
I was not myself when I did that, and I have since been restored to full health. I'm not mentally ill anymore. I'm not a danger to myself or others.
This is 18-year-old Isabella Guzman making grimaces at the courtroom camera after unaliving her mother with a kitchen knife. News of the gruesome incident quickly sent shockwaves through the internet community. But a lot of people didn't seem to shake off the conflict. How can such a sweet-looking girl be a psycho killer? Sadly, psychopathic killers take all shapes and sizes. If they were huge, red, and horned, we'd know to steer away from them. But despite Isabella's fraught relationship with her parents, they never thought her capable of such a heinous act. She was a rowdy teenager, they thought. She would grow out of it. However, an investigation would uncover a deeply troubled girl with a slew of mental illnesses. What made her do the unthinkable that night? And where is she now? This is the tragic story of the psycho killer who jagged her mom 79 times to feel good. It was close to midnight on August 28, 2013 in Aurora, Colorado, when Isabella walked into her kitchen to get a knife. She calmly walked upstairs and waited in front of the bathroom door. The door was closed. Her mother, Yunmi, was having a shower. As soon as Yunmi stopped the water, Isabella barged in with her knife. Her stepfather, Ryan, heard the blood-chilling screams of his wife from downstairs. He rushed upstairs to her aid, but his daughter had locked the bathroom door from the inside. As Ryan fell to his knees, he saw his wife's blood pouring out of the bathroom onto the first-floor hallway. He was filled with dread. He knew his stepdaughter was bad news. He never expected things to be that bad, though. He watched helplessly as Isabella unlocked the door and walked out, covered in her mother's blood and still holding on to her large kitchen knife. She walked down the stairs and out the front door, barefoot, with a blank stare on her face. Ryan rushed into the bathroom, only to find his poor wife unconscious, lying in a huge red pool. He called 911 and struggled to perform CPR, barely holding down his tears. Heartbreaking. It was too late. When the paramedics arrived at the scene, Yunmi was pronounced dead. Officers surrounded the house and secured the scene. But Ryan broke the bad news. His demented daughter had fled the home. Authorities immediately notified the public and, of course, all the stations in the area, as Isabella needed to be arrested ASAP.
The female is going to be armed with a knife. She's an 18-year-old female. It says mixed race. I think it might be with Asian. She's wearing a pink tank top, shorts, one shoe.
Dale, when we first got here just after 10 o'clock last night, we talked with police. They said they were waiting on a search warrant before they could go inside. When I got here at 4 o'clock this morning, I did see a few officers coming in and out, so it looks like the investigation has started.
Finding Isabella was urgent. She could be in a psychotic state, the detectives concluded, so she could have easily taken other lives on her escape attempt. Within the hour, the Denver PD had landed a helping hand and sent helicopters looking through Aurora and its surroundings. However, it was a simple witness account that brought Isabella to jail. Someone saw her in a parking garage, less than half a mile away from her home, early the following day.
So just to give you a little bit more about the arrest, now cops say that when they got the call to go to the parking garage about a body, they went to the car, no one was inside. They bring out a K9, they start to do a search of the garage. Now cops believe that the teen girl saw this coming, saw the K9 doing a search, and actually tried to leave and escape and walk out of the garage, but officers were able to recognize her and take her into custody.
Isabella was behind bars. She couldn't hurt anyone else. But the million-dollar question remained. Why on earth had she done this? Were there red flags and opportunities to prevent this tragic incident? The case was just beginning as detectives unraveled Isabella's past. Isabella Guzman was born on June 9, 1995, to Robert Guzman and Yunmi Hoy. She was only 7 when her parents split up, but the two decided to co-parent, so Isabella would live with both of them. Isabella not only split her time between the two homes, Robert and Yunmi also spent a lot of time together and even continued to work together at their photography studio. But this did not mean Yunmi did not move on romantically. Eventually, she remarried a man named Ryan. Isabella hated this, though. She kept trash-talking Ryan and insulting her mom for doing a bad job at replacing her dad. Yunmi had to explain explained to her daughter that Ryan was not a replacement dad, just her new partner. Robert would still be a part of their family no matter what. However, Isabella did not seem to understand this. She viciously rejected Ryan with all her might. There was something else Isabella hated. You see, even though she kind of had 3 parents now, they all struggled to make ends meet. This was one of the reasons Robert and Yunmi kept their studio. They just could not afford to find 2 separate places to rent or make any big career changes. Money had always been an issue, but when Isabella was very young, she did not compare herself to other kids. During her high school years, though, this became a big problem for her. Her family could not afford to take her on vacations or buy her new clothes. This only made her feel increasingly isolated from her schoolmates. When investigators began speaking to Isabella's former friends, neighbors, and classmates, they unveiled a grim reality. She would never smile, play, or want to spend time with her parents. Isabella was deeply unhappy. Everyone who knew her saw it, but no one really knew just how much she blamed her mother for it. Meanwhile, Yunmi was working 12-hour shifts to make enough money for her daughter, and everyone who knew her saw how much she loved her daughter. But Isabella had always hated her mother. After Robert left home when she was 7, Isabella had frequent arguments with Yunmi, to the point that there were screams and crying heard from their home every single day. After a few years, it got so bad that Yunmi sent Isabella to live with Robert, hoping the 2 of them would get on better. But it wasn't much different with Robert either. By the time she was a teenager, Isabella had been passed on between her parents several times. This only made her feel like neither of her parents wanted her. The more rejected she felt, the worse her tantrums got, so the more she would be passed around. It was a truly vicious cycle. Then, Isabella let her parents know she didn't want them either. Aged only 10, she would say she preferred staying home after school than going to the photography studio with her parents. Even when they had to work late, she said she was better off home alone. At school, Isabella never performed well. Her grades were mediocre, and she had a tendency to get in trouble with authorities before she was even a teen. And when she was 18, weeks before her final exams, Isabella dropped out of school. This caused a brand new fight with her parents. Yunmi and Ryan were really disappointed. She was this close to graduating. After, she would have so many academic or career opportunities. She only had to push a little more. Isabella would throw several tantrums, blaming her parents for existing and refusing to return to school. Then there was silence. The silent treatment is an old and childish manipulation tactic. However, Isabella's parents were used to this. They thought she would start talking again soon, but a few weeks later, Isabella would take her mother's life with a knife. Yunmi's autopsy revealed 79 jag marks on her face and neck. This was a frenzied, hateful attack meant to humiliate her too. Stabs to the face are rarely lethal. They're just evidence of really personal slayings. As the detectives spoke to Ryan about the months leading up to the murder, they unveiled the grimmest story yet. After she dropped out of school, Isabella's fights with Yunmi escalated to an unprecedented level. There were tantrums and fits of rage every single day. Her disrespect toward her mother was shocking even to Ryan, who had gotten used to his stepdaughter's nasty, entitled behavior. On August 27th, Isabella screamed at her mom again, but she didn't stop there.
At one point, Guzman reportedly yelled at her mom and spit on her.
The same day, she wrote an email to her mom saying, "You will pay." For the prosecution, this meant premeditation. She was facing a first-degree murder charge.
It's going to be very difficult for defense attorneys to argue, oh, this was heat of passion, because she wrote her mother hours ahead of time, you will pay for this. You will pay. And the mother was so afraid that she called police. She called her husband, that she was really afraid.
There was more indeed. Yunmi had phoned authorities the morning before her death, and when the officers arrived, they asked her if she wanted her daughter arrested. In an ironic twist, Yunmi chose to protect her daughter and said no. Before the day was over, she would be dead at Isabella's hands.
But when it gets to the point where you as the parent or caregiver are so afraid you are locking your doors, you need to call the police, and sometimes, I hate to say it, but oftentimes it means you have to have your child arrested. That sounds cold, I know that.
Detectives and psychologists were equally baffled when it came to a motive. Sure, Isabella hated her mom for not providing her with the luxuries other kids had, but this was not enough. How does this resentment lead to murder?
Something happened to this young lady in the past and it was extraordinarily traumatic and stressful, and that she never got the help she needed. And so it just kind of all spilled out like a volcano all at that moment, and that rage was focused on her mother.
As more psychiatrists spoke to Isabella, they reached a running theory. She was suffering from untreated schizophrenia.
The warning signs went back years. They didn't just start 2 or 3 days before the homicide.
The fact that she preferred to be by herself as a young child, and the way fights would go from E to 100 in seconds pointed at that diagnosis. According to some experts, the catalyst for the final act was Yun Mi phoning authorities the morning before her death.
That certainly could have been a catalyst. It could have been something that made Isabella even more angry than she probably already was. But we don't know what that conversation was between law enforcement, her mother, and Isabella.
Isabella would tell detectives that when she unalived her mom, she was convinced she was a woman named Cecilia. Voices in her mind had told her she had to take Cecilia's life if she wanted to save the rest of the world from dying. This went hand in hand with the schizophrenia diagnosis she received during her trial. She pleaded innocent by reason of insanity. Simply pay, she was so mentally unwell at the time of the murder that she didn't know right from wrong, and she didn't understand what she was doing. To many people's shock, the judge accepted her plea and sentenced her to the Colorado Mental Health Institute at Pueblo. She will be there until doctors decide she is well enough to leave. According to Isabella, in 2021, she is well enough.
I was not myself when I did that, and I have since been restored to full health. I'm not mentally ill anymore. I'm not a danger to myself or others.
From the facility, Isabella also spoke about her parents abusing her from a very young age.
I was abused at home by my family for many years. My parents are Jehovah's Witnesses, and I left the religion when I was 14, and the abuse at home worsened after I quit.
Jehovah's Witnesses are a Christian branch known for their particularly strict rules. It's likely Isabella was resistant to their rules, and this only made their discipline worse. Isabella's parents never addressed her mental health. They simply assumed her bad behavior stemmed from her resentment over the family's financial struggles. Perhaps there were many red flags about Isabella that were in fact cries for help. Sadly, her parents did not know to seek counseling before it was too late, but her case was yet to take another twist. TikTok can make and break trends overnight. 8 years after Isabella took her mother's life, the strange faces she made during her trial became TikTok sensations. Well, it was her weird grimaces with Ava Max's song Sweet But Psycho as the soundtrack. Ava Max was called out for her lyrics even before this trend started. Many people said it was wrong to send the message that it's okay to be a psychopath as long as you're pretty. Indeed, many TikTok users commented that Isabella was just too sweet-looking to be a psycho killer, except she was. Well, maybe not psychopathic, but schizophrenic. It was just as bad. In fact, when you look at these reels knowing she had an untreated mental illness, it's just not funny anymore. Still, some people appreciated her so-called pretty aesthetic, completely avoiding the topic that she'd jagged her mother 79 times, so others called them out on it. The biggest issue that people pointed out was that this trend reinforced Ava Max's weird lyrics, that it's somehow okay to unalive your mom as long as you're attractive.
To be honest, I'm glad this trend didn't last long, and looking at the videos some people made, it was really gross. It's not okay to excuse someone's actions just because they're good looking or charming. On the flip side, it's also really insensitive to make fun of someone in a mental health crisis. We need to discourage making content like this when it does so much harm to people who are mentally ill.
Also, just saying, making fun of a person with severe mental health issues is wrong on a million levels. Slowly, the trend died out, and Isabella remained a controversial figure in true crime and TikTok history mystery alight. In June 2021, Isabella was granted permission to leave the hospital for regular therapy sessions. According to several sources, she is doing her best to stay out of trouble and is taking medication to prevent any more psychotic episodes. Let's just hope that Yunmi's loved ones can recover from this unspeakable tragedy. All right, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on today's story, and do you know any similar ones? Let me know in a comment, and before you go, don't forget to check the next video.